Today we talk about Colt Keith a little bit more, introductory press conference and the corresponding move, adding him to the 40-man roster. We're going to talk about Jackson Jobe getting a spring training invite. We're going to talk about a couple of minor league signings the Tigers have made over the last week. And then we'll talk about the remaining free agents on the market and if the Tigers should take a chance on any of them. All today on Locked On Tigers.
You are Locked On Tigers, your daily Detroit Tigers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another edition of Locked On Tigers. I'm, of course, your host, Scott Bentley. Today is Wednesday, January 31st, 2024. Thank you so much for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every single day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts, including YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers can join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. Hope you're having a fantastic week so far. Happy Wednesday, the midway point here. We are going to have a few different conversations today. Like I said, we are going to talk about Colt Keith being added to the 40-man, talk a little bit about his introductory press conference. There was some insightful stuff in there. Rarely do you see, actually. I thought it was like more insightful than most press conferences go. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Going to talk about Jackson Jobe. Sounds like he's going to get an invite to spring training. Then the Tigers made a couple of minor league signings, pretty small stuff, just guys that are presumably going to be in Toledo and not on the 40-man roster. And then we're going to end the show, however much time we have left, just talking about some remaining free agents that are still on the market. I still get asked about Matt Chapman. I get asked about Blake Snell, right? Like there's still these guys that have yet to sign contracts. I'm recording this very early on Tuesday afternoon, by the way, right after the Keith presser. So it's only a little bit afternoon. So if Blake Snell or somebody signs and on Tuesday evening, then you know that's old news. But yeah, I just still get a lot of questions about remaining free agents, and I think the Tigers are pretty close to done. I'm not going to, save it or bury the lead here. Again, we'll talk about it more in depth at the end, but I don't think the Tigers are going to go out and sign too many more major league free agents. I think the 40-man roster is pretty close to what the 40-man roster is going to look like when pitchers and catchers report just in less than 2 weeks now. Pretty exciting stuff. Let's start with Colt Keith getting added to the 40-man roster. That becomes officially official. The corresponding move is Devin Sweet getting DFA'd. Obviously, Sweet was just claimed on waivers from the San Francisco Giants just last week, and he is now DFA'd. Look, that's kind of common practice in the Scott Harris era. If he thinks that he can pass someone through waivers, he will claim them and then immediately DFA them, because if nobody claims Sweet, then he's just still in the organization and just not on the 40-man roster. And I think that that's the plan. We'll see. I haven't seen anything. Again, at the time of this recording, pretty early in the day here on Tuesday afternoon in my world. I haven't seen anything where like Sweet's been claimed by another team, but he doesn't have horrible numbers. He's got a decent profile, so it wouldn't shock me too much either way, to be honest. But that's kind of been common practice. If you've been following the Tigers in the Scott Harris era, it's pretty common for him to do this, to pick up somebody with kind of the intentions of, the next person. There's no way he didn't know the Colt Keith extension was on the table when he claimed Sweet, right? So I think that that's just something that he will do fairly often and probably will continue to do. But it's not bad to add to your organizational depth. Never going to have a problem with that. Again, especially if he doesn't get claimed by somebody else, then you just made your pitching deeper. So we'll talk about a couple of more people who made our pitching deeper later on, a couple of minor league signings, both pitchers. But before that, let's talk about the press conference a little bit. The Colt Keith presser was about half an hour, right around noon, 11:30 maybe, actually, on Tuesday morning, and had Colt Keith's agent, Scott Harris, and Jeff Greenberg all on the panel, so to say, all up there in front of all the cameras and reporters. And, I did think that it was a little bit more insightful than most of what we get out of this front office in the Scott Harris era. Not that I want my GM to be like the most honest ever, because I don't want other teams knowing what my team is doing. So it's kind of a fine line. But I think that Colt Keith's agent, Matt Paul, I think that he was very insightful as well. So maybe it was more to do with his openness than it was really the team's. But regardless, we found out a couple of things. One is that the big one that I already got asked about, a few times since the presser ended was, Scott Harris didn't basically pulled the I cannot confirm or deny that he is going to be the opening day second baseman. I do think there is some wiggle room there, right? Like if Colt Keith goes out there and hits 070 in spring training, then like sure, maybe he's not going to be the opening day second baseman. Or if he's batting, a buck 20 and just looks lost defensively at second base, then maybe he's not going to. But I would be pretty darn surprised at this point. I mean, if you've been watching this show during the offseason, right? I appreciate you for first and foremost, but if you've been watching this show, like I've been saying that Colt Keith, right? Like we've been talking about him being the opening day second baseman on this show for 4 or 5 months now, right? Like that's been something well before this contract extension that on this show we've been talking about kind of having a belief of like he's probably going to be the opening day second baseman. That's kind of been our stance. So the extension all but solidifies that in my eyes. To be completely honest with you. But again, a little bit of wiggle room, but I would be pretty surprised if he wasn't. But they did not confirm or deny for whatever that's worth to you. I think the biggest thing I took out of it was when Keith's agent was talking about just like the situation and the way that the contract was presented at the beginning, like first presented. This is not a report. I don't know. I haven't like confirmed this with anyone, but he made it sound like Harris approached them. Harris approached the Colt Keith's camp and put this extension on the table, and it wasn't something that was being too talked about before Harris put it on the table initially. So I like that. And again, we did a whole episode, Monday's show, right, is a complete breakdown of just the contract extension and my thoughts on it. I think it's a very, very smart move by the Detroit Tigers. And I think it's a very team friendly deal, or has the potential to be, I should say, a very team friendly deal for Detroit. So I'm a big fan of it. And if it was, Scott Harris's, if he's the origin, yeah. If he's the origin of the idea, then I give him a lot of credit and kind of a pat on the back there. I mean, a couple more things people asked about second and third base. Harris made it sound like second base was going to be the way of the immediate future. He said he doesn't rule out third base going forward. Keith's camp, him and his agent both talked about, positional versatility and about like at one point, I'm pretty sure Matt Paul said something about, maybe when he's 30, he's playing first base or something, like just really driving home the fact that he can play all over the infield, sans probably shortstop long term. So that's something that Keith's camp at least really drove home. We'll see. I'm pretty confident, I guess is the word, that he's going to be the second baseman in the immediate future. But they said that he would almost certainly take reps at third base in spring. He's going to get looks there. He's going to at least take some grounders there. They'll see what happens. I mean, Harris even mentioned like the way that he fields grounders and the way, his arm slot and just the way his body moves. Like it's better suited for second base, they think. So I'm going under the presumption that he's going to be this opening day second baseman. Goodness. For the Detroit Tigers. So yeah, a few things. It's all over the place. You can watch it. It's only about half an hour, 25, 30 minutes long. And I think it was a little bit more insightful than those were pretty much the highlights. But I did think that there were some good questions out there. Raj of Motor City Metrics asked a good question as well, just talking about the adjustments that Keith has made. That's something I want to talk about as well really quickly. Then we'll move on to the minor league signings. We will do that right after this. It is almost time for the Super Bowl. Happy Super Bowl to all of those who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday is all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets. Obviously, if you're a Lions fan, this Super Bowl, it might sting a little bit. It might sting to watch, but how blessed are we that that we do get to be stung by the almost. I know that's kind of a ridiculous way to look at it, but I'm trying to cope. Okay. Regardless, this is still some of the best football, obviously, the biggest sporting event of the year. And FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. You can bet on which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. I always love putting a little something on like the coin toss and what color the Gatorade's going to be and how long the national anthem is. There's so many ridiculous bets for the Super Bowl. It makes it a lot of fun. New customers can join today and get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked on to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/locked on. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, everybody, welcome back here. Segment 2 of Locked On Tigers. Appreciate you all for tuning in, making us your first listen every single day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back on Friday, and we actually next week will return to being your team actually every single day. We will be back to 5 episodes a week starting next week. Okay, so we'll be back to 5 episodes. We got a lot of preseason prep stuff to go over, a lot of projections, kind of big conversations. We're going to do an episode where we have kind of officially the offseason is done. Last time talking about the entire offseason. Then everything from then on out will be, we'll have a mailbag at one point. Don't put it on today's show. That'll be kind of within the next couple of weeks thing. But we'll have a mailbag at one point about, like going into spring training questions, etc. So a lot of fun stuff coming up. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today, which is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories in the league with our local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows as well. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about the Colt Keith presser is something that, like I said, Rogelio Castillo at Motor City Metrics asked a fantastic question. About just the adjustments that Keith had made last year and some more adjustments that he was making going into this year. Because that was something that we documented on this show, and obviously Raj and Chris Brown and everybody at Tigers Minor League Report also documented pretty well, was that very well. They're the best in the business. It is something that that was, again, noticeable was when he moved up to AAA, he got off to a really, really hot start, and then he slowed down for a little bit. And after he had slowed down, people were wondering why and what adjustments he had to make and whatnot. And that was a lot of pitchers were just throwing fastballs up and in. And that was something that he had to adjust to. And Scott Harris even kind of took the mic and added on to Colt Keith's answer about, his was like, I never back down. Like if somebody finds a weakness in my game, I want to be able to really not only make that not a weakness, but almost make it a strength. And he's constantly making adjustments, and he's really just like a dirtball, man. Like he seems like a really good kid going to work, just constantly making adjustments kind of guy. And Scott Harris said the same thing. Scott Harris was very keen on, this is a kid that when he moved up to AAA had to make adjustments and did. And he deserves a ton of credit for that as well. So that's what you want to see in a young player. You want to see somebody who's constantly making adjustments. Okay, we've spent too much time probably on the press conference. How much can you really take out of a 30-minute presser? Apparently about 10 minutes, according to this show. Jackson Jobe, it sounds like Evan Petzold talks about it of the free a little bit, but it sounds like Jackson Jobe is going to get a spring training. And that's honestly, those reports about the non 40-man roster invitees is always like one of the more fascinating days of the year. We'll obviously break that down on this show when the full list kind of comes out. And they'll kind of trickle out over the next couple of weeks as well. But Jackson Job's one of the first ones we've heard of. The first non 40-man roster, but he will be in big league spring training. That's awesome. And Jackson Jobe is not going to make the major league team on opening day. It's not going to happen. Okay. But I do think there is a real outside chance that at some point this year, he is pitching in Comerica Park. Do I think that it's super likely? Maybe not necessarily. I'm not putting it at 60, 70% likelihood or anything, but I really do think if he just sets the world on fire and is pitching well in AAA at one point this year, that there is a legitimate chance that post-trade deadline or September call-ups, etc., that they add him to the 40 and give him some major league experience. There's pitchers are weird, man, because that arm, there's always just in the back of your mind, there's always just like, what about injury? What about injury? And so you don't want to waste mileage. You don't want to over marinate a pitcher. And so I think there really is a chance of that, and being able for him to be able to go into big league spring training and face against big league hitters, right? I think is an awesome opportunity for him. I'm super excited for him, but I think it's a really, really smart move by the club. Not that it's like rocket science. That probably was a natural progression. Should have just happened anyway. But seeing the news come across my feed was just something I was pretty pumped about. So Jackson Jobe in spring training. Let's talk about a couple of minor league signings the Tigers have made. Drew Anderson and Yoel Peguero. These are, again, minor league signings, guys that are not on the 40-man roster. Drew Anderson is a pretty interesting background. He pitched in the majors for 5 seasons and struggled. Did not have a very good major league career. Had an ERA of 6.5 across those 5 major league seasons in his mid-20s. But then in 2021, pitched 9 games for the Texas Rangers and had a 3.06 ERA. Not bad, very small sample size, right? But not bad. 3.27, sorry. And then in AAA had a 3.06 ERA in 15 appearances. So across AAA in the majors in 2021 in Texas's system was not bad. And that's 92 2/3 innings across both leagues combined, 22 in the majors. And but still couldn't find himself the major league contract that he wanted in America, and has pitched in Japan the last 2 years, and he has pitched for the Hiroshima Carp, and he has been phenomenal. Obviously, the Japanese league is not if you have a sub 2 ERA in Japan, that's not a guarantee, certainly, that you're going to have a sub 2 ERA in the major leagues. But that's not bad competition. There's a legitimate argument that league is the second best league in the world. And so seeing that is he had a 1.88 ERA in 2023, 3.60 ERA in 2022. I mean, you're talking about pretty decent numbers here. And the Tigers signed him to a minor league deal. His profile back in 2021, which is the closest thing we have. We don't have, Baseball Savant or advanced, numbers on the Japanese leagues. But in 2021, just a few years ago, he was sitting 93 mile an hour fastball, 84 mile an hour slider with a curve and a changeup. So yeah, I mean, pretty solid profile. Certainly had good numbers, obviously, in Japan. We will see what happens. This is, again, kind of a flyer. Didn't really walk anybody when he was here still. Again, had a very high ERA, so how much is that really worth to you? But for whatever that's worth, it was kind of a low walk guy then as well. So we'll see. He might be another spring training invite, or maybe somebody they just stash in Toledo until the 40-man roster gets thin enough. But yeah, I think that I'm obviously, I don't think there's too many people that can complain about minor league deals. I'm not going to say that it's like league changing or anything. We'll see. Wouldn't surprise me if he didn't even really pitch in the majors at any point this year. But Drew Anderson won, and then Yoel Peguero is an interesting one as well. We'll talk about him really quickly on the other side of this. eBay Motors, well, they have my favorite tagline of like maybe any ad read we do here. So I can't wait to say it here in a second. But passion, drive, and patience is what brings home the winning trophy and is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. An eBay Guaranteed Fit makes sure your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Burn rubber, not cash goes so crazy. Like, that's such a bar, genuinely. That needs to be in a rap like months and years ago. Welcome back. Third and final segment here, Locked On Tigers. Yoel Peguero is the last minor league signing that the Tigers have made over the last couple of weeks that we're going to talk about. This one there is obviously a profile here because he throws gas. There's video of him back when he was in the Rays system years ago, like pumping 100 miles an hour in bullpen sessions and in games. So that's something, and he's really just fastball slider, trying to develop, some sort of a changeup. There's been some hit or miss results there, but mostly a fastball slider guy. And you can pull that off if you are a reliever. That's one thing about Drew as well. It sounds like the Tigers are going to use him as a reliever, even though before he went overseas, he was he started quite a bit. So that's something that I should have noted there. As far as Yoel here goes, I would be pretty shocked if the Tigers brought him in to be a starter. He was exclusively in the bullpen last year and almost exclusively in the bullpen, really his entire professional career, rather. Back when he was like 19 or 20, he was more of a starter, I guess. But really since then, he's been pretty much a reliever. Yeah, so this dude throws gas. I think that this is somewhat of he has the talent and he has the intangibles. Let's see if we can develop more of a pure pitcher out of him. And look, like for somebody like Drew Anderson, right? He had to go overseas and to have a different perspective to be able to kind of become more of a pitcher rather than a thrower as well. So yeah, and again, very different profiles here. Drew Anderson, I don't think has ever sniffed 100 miles an hour, but there's some high walk numbers here. And the biggest thing to me, like he does have some seasons of lower walk numbers. The biggest thing to me for Peguero is this, that like these K numbers are not good enough, right? Like just straight up, like we can just call it what it is. His strikeout numbers are just straight up not high enough for how good his stuff is and how hard he throws. And so I think that that's something that they'll obviously work on. Again, I don't expect either of these guys really to be like legitimate pieces in the Tigers bullpen. They're minor league deals. They're not on the 40-man roster. Just want to give a quick discussion, keep you all in the loop about the newest members of this team, whether it's, big, massive moves like the Colt Keith extension or just minor league signings. So we'll see what they do. 26 years old for Peguero. I think 30 for Drew Anderson. So we'll see what happens there. But two quote unquote projects for the team this upcoming year. Okay, let's end the show by just talking about some remaining free agents that are still on the board. I still get asked almost every day just about, Matt Chapman. We don't have a third baseman, Matt Chapman. If you've been listening to the show all off season, we did a Matt Chapman rundown, man, maybe as long ago as November. Definitely either November or December. Maybe it was December. and just did a whole episode just about third base and my thoughts and opinions and feelings on the third base position. I'm not like jumping for joy and thrilled that Matt Vierling is probably going to be the opening day third baseman. Okay. I don't like that. I don't. I've been pretty open about that. I think that Matt Vierling could be a really effective and pretty valuable, like super utility guy that can play literally 6 to 7 different positions on the baseball field. I don't think Matt Vierling is a long-term starting third baseman for this baseball team. That being said, that doesn't mean that you just go out there and spend willy-nilly for like marginal upgrades. Matt Chapman, not a marginal upgrade over Matt Vierling. Not what I'm trying to say. Probably a pretty decent one. My point is there is quite a bit of risk in Matt Chapman that I don't think a lot of people have been talking. So, like we talked about, whenever it was a month ago, 2 months ago now, his overall season numbers were pretty in line with his career. And obviously, Chapman is going to give you elite defense, which raises his floor. He also is going to give you good swing decisions. He's going to walk a decent amount, more than a decent amount, a solid amount. But just run some stats by you for his OPS that, again, ended around where it has been for the last 4 years of his career in the mid 700s, right? Post All-Star break last year, Matt Chapman had a 205 batting average and a 664 OPS. That is all post All-Star break. Month by month OPS. April, he had an 1150. He was maybe the best hitter on the planet in the month of April. He set the world on fire. We talked about it on this show when it happened. He was crushing the baseball. He had a homer against the Tigers at one point in April. Smashing, okay? May, 585. June, 633. July, 908. August, 532. September, 632. So if you just go from May 1st until the last game of the season, he didn't miss substantial time due to injury or anything either. May 1st until the end of the season. So only removing his 1150 OPS in April. That's the only month we're taking out. This is all but 1 month of his season last year. 205 average, 298 OBP, 361 slug. That is a 659 OPS with 12 homers and 33 RBIs. That is removing 1 month of his entire season last year. Just one. So, he also hasn't had an OPS over 757 since before COVID, since the 2019 season, on a full year. So if you're expecting, like if you're one of the people that, and I'm not trying to deter you or tell you if you want Matt Chapman, that's like stupid or you're wrong. That's not what I'm here to do. If you are someone who is all in on like, we really need to just go get Matt Chapman, even if it's only a couple year deal, he's better than what we have. I don't necessarily disagree in a vacuum that he's better than what we have, right? I'm not a huge fan of Matt Vierling at third base. But I would imagine that Chapman is going to want somewhat of a longer-term deal. Obviously, he's playing the waiting game, so maybe his market has dwindled. Maybe it's still on fire. I don't know. I'm not in those rooms. But there is legitimate risk. He strikes out. Again, last year, outside of 1 month, was not very effective at all at the plate. The one thing he does get you is, at a minimum, he's going to be a really, really, really good defender, and he's going to walk a decent amount. But walking can only take you so far if you're not getting hits, right? Sub 300 OBP with his walk rate is absurd, and that's what he was from May 1st till the end of the year. So I struggle to justify in my head giving Matt Chapman like $25 to $30 million a year. That is something that I would not do if I were the Detroit Tigers. 2-year deal, 7-year deal, I don't care. I would not break the bank for Chapman like that. It's looking at those numbers, it's even tough to really talk about like 22 to 25 mil, to be completely honest with you. That's again, May 1st to the end of the year, like 659. Is that what I said? OPS. That's really rough. And that's not, again, his season OPS last year is not an outlier. That's about what it's been the last going on 4 years. 2019 was the last time it was over 760. nonetheless 800, etc. So um, paying that much money that we think he's going to get, if he goes out there and he signs a contract for like $9 million, which won't happen, but like if it does, then sure, we can be like, why couldn't the Tigers have done that? Fair enough. But for the amount of money we're presuming that he's going to be in the market for, that's just a really tough sell for me. Even though, again, if it did happen, I would agree that he would be better than what we have out there on opening day right now. Both can be true. Okay. Blake Snell is another one. I don't think we're going to break the bank on pitching, and it's certainly not going to be Blake Snell. Just look at Blake Snell's profile, and that should kind of tell you all you need to know about why he's not going to be a Detroit Tiger. He doesn't allow hits, but he walks everyone. he is 3 true outcome in pitcher form, right? Like this dude is walk, strikeout, or hard contact. He's Adam Dunn if Adam Dunn was a pitcher. So I don't think that that's going to be too much of a Tiger thing. I don't think they want a pitcher that walks as many hitters as Blake Snell does. Certainly not for the money that he's probably going to garner as well. Similar conversation. If we added a Cy Young winner to the team, would I be happy? Yeah. Okay. I wouldn't be complaining, but for the amount of money that he's probably going to get, I think we could probably better spend our money elsewhere. There's a couple of more really quickly. If you just want to look at third base and you go, okay, Scott, well, you sold me on Chapman, on not wanting him. What about any other third basemen that are still out there? There's no clear upgrades over Matt Vierling that are out there now once you get past Chapman. Chapman's like the only one left. Justin Turner just signed with the Blue Jays. I don't think he's really a third baseman going forward anyway. I think he's going to play a lot of first and DH for them. Jeimer Candelario signed with the Reds a while ago, back in early December. Gio Urshela lately has pretty similar stats to what Matt Vierling did last season. Josh Donaldson, no thanks. Evan Longoria, or did Donaldson? I'm trying to remember. Anyway, Longoria, certainly at his peak, was one of the best third basemen in baseball, but now pushing 40. Probably not too much more of an upgrade based on what he did last season. Eduardo Escobar was like a -1 player last year as far as WAR goes. Like, certainly not a clear upgrade over him. Brian Anderson, like everybody else outside of Chapman, you're talking about marginal or not at all upgrades over Matt Vierling. So I think the game plan is to go into the season with Vierling at third, hope that Jace Young sets the world on fire in the minors, and maybe he garners a mid-season call-up, assuming Vierling is still doing, this like 715 to 730 OPS baseball with, an average glove at third base. Vierling gives you more than that, which is not something that I'm, predicting, certainly. If he gives you much more than that, then, it's a different conversation, and you probably just ride the rest of the year with him at third and whatnot. But that's what I think their game plan is right now. I think it's going with Vierling and Ibanez and McKinstry, kind of platoon third base up a little bit. You got some guys who can play decent third defensively and can be good and have proven to be like, around league average hitters. You piece it together with them, and if Jace Young is hitting really well, then you call him up. If not, then I do think that not addressing third in any capacity is a bold move, and it's one that I disagree with. It's one that I don't love Chapman. We talked about this back in December, right? I didn't love any of the free agent third basemen. I didn't love any of these guys. So I've always been of the opinion you have resources and you have assets to trade. You should have traded for a third baseman. That's been my take all offseason. I stand by that it should have been what they did. And I think it's a mistake to not do that with the assets that they have. But there's a difference between what I want and what's going to happen. And I think that it's going to be the Vierling, Jace Young experience. And I'm going to be totally fine when we inevitably don't sign Matt Chapman. I'm going to be 100% okay with that. All right. Thanks for making Locked On Tigers your first listen every day. Shout out to the everydayers that do tune in every day. We will be back on Friday. All right. Peace and love. Going to therapy's dope. Have a great rest of your week, everybody. Go Tigers.